Friends, we are going to study the anatomy of facial nerve, and you'll be surprised to know that this nerve is involved in the process of salivation and in the process of lacrimation. So today we learn the facial nerve in detail, discussing its various fibers, their respective nuclei, the course of facial nerve, its branches, and the anomalies caused by injury to facial. Discussing some basic facts about the facial nerve. Firstly, the facial nerve is the seventh cranial nerve. It's a mixed nerve. That is, it contains both sensory and motor fibers. It's the nerve of the second branchial arch and accompanies the mandibular nerve to supply the derivatives of the first branchial arch. Moreover, it supplies the muscles of facial expressions. Now, we shall talk about the nomenclature of the fibers. When we talk about the nerve fibers, we classify them into two main groups, sensory and motor. But is that all? We need some more details. And there is a three-letter name for a fiber which describes three things about it. We need answers to three questions. Whether the fiber is sensory or motor, what structures does it supply, and lastly, what type of sensations does it carry. Based on whether the fiber is sensory or motor, we classify the fibers into two groups, efferent and efferent fibers. Based on what structures does the fiber supply, we classify the fibers into two groups again, somatic and visceral fibers. Somatic fibers supply the derivatives of somites, and visceral fibers supply the visceral derivatives, that is the viscera, blood vessels, glands, and the derivatives of pharyngeal arches. And lastly, talking about what type of sensations do they carry. We classify the fibers into the fibers carrying general sensations and special sensations. The three-lettered name of a fiber answers all these three questions regarding the fiber. The first question is answered by the last letter. Here we have GSA, and its full form is general somatic efferent. Question is sensory or motor. We have A, so the fiber is efferent, that is sensory. Secondly, what structures does the fiber supply? It supplies certain derivatives of somites. And lastly, what sensation does it carry? This question is answered by the first letter of the name, the G, which stands for general. So it carries general sensations. Give me another example. Let's say SVE, that is spatial visceral efferent fiber. First question, the fibers are sensory or motor? Last letter answers it. They are efferent, that is motor. Secondly, what structures does it supply? It supplies visceral derivatives. It can be said from the middle letter, the V. And lastly, what type of sensations does it carry? Special sensations. So thus, I have explained the nomenclature of fibers. Now, talking specifically about the fibers of the facial nerve. So as I said, it's a mixed nerve. So you have both efferent and efferent fibers. Talking about the efferent fibers, we further classify them into two groups. The efferents from somatic derivatives and efferents from the visceral derivatives. Now the efferents from the somatic derivatives carry only general sensations, and these fibers are not that significant. But the efferents from the visceral derivatives are further classified into two groups, those which carry the general sensations and those which carry the special sensations. So we have three types of efferent fibers: general somatic efferent, general visceral efferent, and special visceral efferent. Now coming to the efferents, talking about the facial nerve, we only have efferents to visceral derivatives, and the efferents to the visceral derivatives are further classified into two groups, those which carry the general sensations and those which carry the special sensations. So here we have two types of efferent fibers, general visceral efferent and special visceral efferent. So in all there are five fibers, three types of efferent and two types of efferent. Three types of efferent are general somatic efferent, general visceral efferent, and special visceral efferent. And two types of efferent are general visceral efferent and special visceral efferent. Now, talking about the functions of various fibers. Firstly, talking about the general somatic efferent fibers, these don't have much significant function, but they are directed towards the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, and they carry proprioceptive sensations from a certain part of the auricle. Then, coming to the special visceral efferent fibers, these fibers carry the spatial sensation of taste from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. Then, talking about general visceral efferent fibers, these fibers are secretomotor to number 1, the lacrimal gland, number 2, submandibular and sublingual salivary glands, and number 3, the glands of nose, palate, and pharynx. Then, we have the general visceral efferent fibers, which are sensory to the structures which are supplied by general visceral efferent fibers. And lastly, we have the special visceral efferent fibers, which supply the muscles of facial expression and are involved in the elevation of hyoid bone. Talking about the nuclei associated with the facial nerve, we have four nuclei. Firstly, the motor nucleus, from which the special visceral efferent fibers supplying the muscles of facial expressions arise. Then we have the superior salivatory nucleus, from which the general visceral efferent fibers supplying the sublingual and submandibular salivary glands arise. Then we have the lacrimatary nucleus, from which the general visceral efferent fibers supplying the lacrimal gland and the glands of nose, pharynx and palate arise. And lastly, we have the nucleus of tractus solitarius, into which the special visceral efferents and the general visceral efferents meet. Now, we shall learn the course of the facial nerve. So, firstly, the facial nerve is attached to the brainstem, that is the pons, the lower pons, by two roots. The sensory root, which is known as nervus intermedius, and the motor root. Then, both these roots pass into the internal acoustic matters, where they are accompanied by the vestibulocochlear nerve, the eighth cranial nerve, and the labyrinthine vessels. At the end of the internal acoustic matters, these two roots combine to form a single nerve. Then, in the facial canal, now we come to the facial canal, the second part of the course of the facial nerve. In facial canal, we divide into three parts. The first part runs laterally, and there is a sharp band between the first and second parts, which is known as the genu, and there is a ganglion there, known as geniculate ganglion, as it is present at the genu. The second part runs backwards, and passing between the two bony points, promontory and adductus to mastoid antrum. It runs downwards and runs as the third part. The third part comes out of the stylomastoid foramen, and now begins the extracranial course of the facial nerve. Coming out of this stylomastoid foramen, the facial nerve enters the substance of parotid gland, and there divides into its 5 terminal branches: temporal, zygomatic, buccal, marginal mandibular, and facial. And if you remember these branches by a funny mnemonic, Tu Jandu Bam, Mujhe Chhod, where Tu stands for our temporal, Jandu stands for zygomatic, Bam stands for buccal, Mujhe stands for marginal mandibular, and Chhod stands for cervical. Talking about various branches of the facial nerve, we classify the branches into 3 groups. The branches within the in the facial canal, branches at the stylomastoid foramen, and lastly, the branches within the substance of the parotid gland. In the facial canal, we have 3 branches: the greater petrosal nerve, the nerve to stapedius, and the chordae tympani nerve. Again, there are 3 branches at the stylomastoid foramen: the posterior auricular branch, stylomyoid branch, and lastly the digastric branch. Within the substance of the parotid gland, we have 5 terminal branches: temporal, zygomatic, buccal, marginal mandibular, and the cervical. Now, we shall integrate all the concepts which we have learned up till now. Various nuclei of the facial nerve, various fibers which arise from them and are distributed within the various branches of facial nerve, and the course of facial nerve. And we shall understand the functional significance of each of these branches. But before going to the diagram, let's understand the color coding system of the diagram. So, this thick blue color signifies general somatic afferent fibers. Primarily, the blue color is for afferents and the black color is for efferents. So the thick blue color is for general somatic afferent. The straight blue line are for spatial visceral afferents. The dotted blue lines are for general visceral afferents. Now, dotted are for general and straight lines are for spatial. So, dotted blue lines signify the general visceral afferent fibers. The straight black lines signify spatial visceral efferent fibers. And the dotted black lines signify the general visceral efferent fibers. So keep this color coding in your mind. So these are the nuclei of facial nerve. Here's the motor nucleus of the facial nerve, from which the spatial visceral efferent fibers arise. These are the secretomotor nuclei. Here's the superior salivatory nucleus, and here's the lacrimatic nucleus. And these are the sensory nuclei, present in the nucleus of tractus solitarius. Now, talking firstly about the branches within the facial canal. We firstly have the greater petrosal nerve. This nerve carries general visceral efferent fibers arising from the lacrimatary nucleus and the general visceral afferent fibers which arrive at the nucleus of tractus solitarius. The general visceral efferent fibers are secretomotor to lacrimal gland and the glands of nose, pharynx and palate. Talking about the secretomotor pathway of all these glands, the greater petrosal nerve is met by the deep petrosal nerve. It continues as the nerve to pterygoid canal and relays in the pterygopalatine ganglion. And from the ganglion, the postganglionic branches are passed to the lacrimal gland and the glands, the nasal, pharyngeal and palatal glands. Now, talking about the nerve to stapedius. So, it carries the spatial visceral efferent fibers which arise from the motor nucleus and are motor to the stapedius muscle. Coming to the most important branch of the facial nerve, the chorda tympani branch. It carries the spatial visceral efferent fibers which arrive at the nucleus of Tractus solitarius, general visceral efferent fibers which arise from the superior salivatory nucleus, and the general visceral efferent fibers which also arrive at the nucleus of Tractus solitarius. The spatial visceral efferent fibers carry sensation of taste from the anterior two-thirds of the tongue. The general visceral efferent fibers are secretomotor to the submandibular and sublingual gland and are relayed in the submandibular ganglion. And the general visceral efferent fibers are sensory to these glands and carry sensations from the two salivary glands. Now, we talk about the branches of the facial canal. Now we will talk about the branches at the stylomastoid foramen. From now, all the branches are motor to various muscles and carry the spatial visceral efferent fibers. So, at the stylomastoid foramen, we have three branches: the posterior auricular branch, the stylohyoid branch, and the digastric branch. Posterior auricular branch supplies the muscle of the same name, auricularis posterior, and other two muscles, occipitalis and the intrinsic muscles on the back of the auricle. Then we have the stylohyoid branch, which supplies the muscle of the same name, stylohyoid muscle, and the digastric branch, which supplies the posterior belly of the digest. Now, talking about the five terminal branches which pass through the substance of parotid gland. Firstly, we have the temporal branch. Now, temporal branch supplies some of the anterior counterparts of the muscles supplied by the posterior auricular branch. For example, posterior auricular supplies auricularis posterior, temporal supplies auricularis anterior, posterior auricular supplies occipitalis. Temporal branch supplies the frontalis muscle, which is, you may say, that is a anterior counterpart of occipitalis. Posterior auricular supplies the intrinsic muscles on the back of the auricle, while the temporal branch supplies intrinsic muscles on the lateral part of the auricle, which is anterior to the back of the auricle. There are three more muscles which the temporal branch supplies: auricularis superior, orbicularis oculi, and corrugator superciliaris. Now, coming to the zygomatic branch, it also supplies the orbicularis oculi muscle. Buccal branch supplies the muscles in the vicinity of buccinator. Marginal mandibular supplies the muscles at chin. And the cervical branch supplies the platysma. The general somatic efferent sensations from the part of auricle arrived at the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, and these carry the proprioceptive sensations from the particular part of the auricle. Discussing the branches in a tabular form. Please note this table in your notebook. Firstly, discussing the branches within the facial canal. So, the greater petrosal nerve consists of general visceral efferent fibers and general visceral efferent. General visceral efferent are involved in the secretomotor function of lacrimal, nasal, pharyngeal, and palatal glands. General visceral efferent carries sensory impulses from these glands. Then coming to the nerve to stapedius, it carries only spatial visceral efferent fibers, which are motor to stapedius. Talking about the chorda tympani nerve, it carries spatial visceral efferent fibers, which carry taste sensations from the anterior two-thirds of the tongue. Then the general visceral efferent, which are secretomotor to submandibular and sublingual glands, and general visceral efferent, which are sensory from these glands. Talking about the branches at the stylomastoid foramen, firstly we have the posterior auricular branch, then the stylohyoid branch, and lastly the digastric branch. And all these branches carry spatial visceral efferent fibers. Firstly, talking about the posterior auricular branch, it is motor to auricularis posterior, occipitalis, and the intrinsic muscles on the back of the auricle. Then the stylohyoid branch, it is motor to the stylohyoid muscle, and the digastric branch is motor to the posterior belly of digest. Now, talking about the branches through the substance of the parotid gland, all these branches carry spatial visceral efferent fibers. Firstly, talking about the temporal branch, it supplies the auricularis anterior, frontalis, and intrinsic muscles on the lateral side of auricle, auricularis superior, orbicularis oculi, and corrugator superciliaris. Zygomatic also supplies the orbicularis oculi muscle. Buccal supplies the muscles in the vicinity of buccinator. Marginal mandibular supplies the muscles at chin. And cervical branch supplies the platysma. Now, we shall discuss about the lesions of the facial nerve or the injuries of the facial nerve. And they are firstly classified into two groups: supranuclear lesions and infranuclear lesions. Supranuclear lesions are the lesions of the parts above the nucleus of the facial nerve, and infranuclear are the lesions below the nucleus of the facial. So, talking firstly about the supranuclear lesions. So, the supranuclear lesions occur in the higher parts of the CNS. For example, injury due to the hemorrhage in internal capsule may cause supranuclear lesions of facial nerve. The corticonuclear fibers are involved, and Due to these lesions, upper motor neuron type of paralysis of the contralateral lower half of the face occurs. Let me make you understand this by diagram. Supposingly this is the face of the person. These are his cerebral hemispheres. Suppose this part is the affected side of the supranuclear lesion. Then the symptoms will be seen in this part. This is the contralateral lower part of the face, contralateral lower quadrant of the face. And the effects are that the facial expressions are not affected as they are bilaterally represented in the hemispheres, but the voluntary actions of the muscles are affected. The infranuclear lesions. So in the infranuclear lesions, the injury is somewhere between the internal acoustic meatus and the terminal branches of the facial nerve. And due to this type of lesions, the lower motor neuron type of paralysis of the ipsilateral half of the face occurs. For example, if the injury is on this side of the facial nerve, then this much whole half will be affected. And the effects are variable as per the site of injury. Between the internal acoustic meatus and the stylomastoid foramen, there is a significant part of facial nerve present, and so there can be injury on any of these parts, and there are variable effects depending on the part or the site of injury. Some manifestations are seen in all the sites of injury. These are common to all the 4 sites of injury, which we will see in the coming topic. So we go from above the face to the below the face. Firstly, beginning from the forehead, the muscle present over here is frontalis, and as frontalis is paralyzed, there is a disability to form wrinkles on the forehead. Wrinkling of forehead is disabled. Then going downwards, we have the eyes, and the muscles associated with the eyes is the orbicularis oculi, and as it is paralyzed, the person can close his eyes. Moreover, the palpebral fissure is widened. Then below we go to the cheek. Here we have the nasolabial folds, and the associated muscle is the levator labii superioris alec nasi. And as it is paralyzed, there is a flattening of the nasolabial folds. Then we have the nose and the nares, and the muscle associated with them is the dilator nares muscle. And as it is paralyzed, there is a disability to dilate the nares. The person can dilate his nares. Then we have the lips and the mouth. The muscle around the oral fissure is the orbicularis oris, and as it is paralyzed, there is a drooling of saliva from the mouth of the person, and he is unable to close his mouth. And as buccinator is paralyzed, the person can't blow or whistle, and food is accumulated in his or her mouth. Now we shall discuss various sites of injury and the particular symptoms of that particular site of injury. And before beginning discussing those sites, let's understand a simple rule that more proximal the injury occurs, more part will be affected. For example, if injury occurs here, this much part will be affected. If the injury occurs here, then this much part plus this much part will be affected. If injury occurs here, this much part plus this much part plus this much part will be affected, and so on. So it is additive in nature. So firstly, our first set of injury is stylomastoid foramen. The injury at stylomastoid foramen is known as Bell's palsy. We discussed some all the 6 symptoms which we discussed before are seen in the stylomastoid foramen, and plus 2 more additional symptoms are seen. The symmetry of face is disturbed as the unopposed action of the contralateral side of face occurs, as the ipsilateral side is paralyzed. So unopposed action of the muscles of contralateral side occurs, and so the symmetry is disturbed, and there is a tibial appearance if the person becomes like this. The second symptom is the zygomaticus major is paralyzed, and so the person cannot open his mouth wide while laughing. So the Bell's palsy has 8 symptoms, the 6 which are common to all the sites of injury, and 2 more. Now going upwards, the second site of injury is somewhere within the mastoid segment of facial. So the manifestations seen here are the manifestations due to the injury at stylomastoid foramen, plus manifestations due to the impairment of the function of chorda tympani. Recall the function of chorda tympani in your mind. So the manifestations seen are loss of taste from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, and loss of salivation from submandibular and sublingual gland. Then our third site of injury is middle ear segment of the facial canal, and the symptoms seen here are the symptoms due to the injury at stylomastoid foramen, plus the symptoms which are seen due to the impairment of the function of chorda tympani, plus the symptoms which are seen due to the impairment of the nerve to stapedius. And those symptoms are when the stapedius muscle is involved in the stapedial reflex and the attenuation reflexes. So if the muscle is paralyzed, then firstly we'll observe loss of homolateral stapedial reflex and a symptom known as hyperacusis, where very low intensity sounds are heard as loud sounds. And our last site of injury is at the internal acoustic meatus. And so almost the entire part is affected. So here the symptoms due to injury at sternum foramen, plus the symptoms due to impairment of the function of chorda tympani, plus the symptoms due to the impairment of the nerve to stapedius, plus the symptoms due to the impairment of the function of greater petrosum, which are absence of lacrimation from the lacrimal gland and absence of secretion from the nasal, pharyngeal and palatine glands. Friends, we often hear people saying that वो तो मगर के आंसू बहाता है. The phrase means that the person is deceptive, or you may say he's shrewd and is seeking sympathy. But sometimes मगर के आंसू मजबूरी के भी होते हैं. And this interesting majburi, known as crocodile tear syndrome, is due to impairment in the function of facial nerve. We discussed that the general visceral efferent fibers from the lacrimal nucleus supply the lacrimal gland, due to which the process of lacrimation occurs, that is the production of tears, and the general visceral efferent fibers from the superior salivary nucleus supply the salivary glands, the submandibular and the sublingual glands. So the type of fibers is same, but the destinations are different. Sometimes an injury occurs, and after the injury, when the regrowth of fibers occurs, the fibers devoted to salivation mix with the fibers devoted to lacrimation, and when the person is eating and the signals for salivation are generated, but the fibers are directed towards the fibers devoted to lacrimation, towards the lacrimal gland, and so instead of salivation, lacrimation occurs, and the eyes are full of tears, though there is no necessity of it. Instead of salivation, lacrimation process occurs, and this is the crocodile tear syndrome. I repeat again, the general visceral efferent fibers devoted for the process of salivation arise from the superior salivatory nucleus, and those devoted for the process of lacrimation arise from the lacrimatory nucleus. But sometimes an injury occurs, and after the injury, due to the abnormal regrowth of fibers, the fibers devoted to salivation mix with those devoted to the lacrimation, and when the signals for salivation are generated while eating, they go instead towards the lacrimal gland, and instead of salivation, the process of lacrimation occurs. This is our crocodile tear syndrome. So this was all about facial nerve. I hope you enjoyed learning with me. Thanks for watching.